when war breaks out, everyone heads to the supermarket. So are you going to spend your day in line trying to get some cheese, or are you going to be able to have the mental capacity to last longer than most other people do because they don't have extra supplies? Who knows what the world's going to look like a few months from now? We're in flux. We're in a blender.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin weekly specials for June 16th through June 23rd, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, we feature backdated quarter-ounce gold American Eagles at just $75 over melt per coin. Next, backdated 1-ounce silver maples are only $3.09 over spot. 90% mixed junk constitutional silver is just 99 cents over spot. And finally, backdated 1-ounce platinum platypus coins are just $1.19 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. And back with us today is our good friend Rafi Farber from The Endgame Investor on Substack. Rafi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me back, Elijah, especially during these crazy times.
Definitely, and thanks for making the time. I know where you live in Israel, things are really heating up there. Did you want to tell us how you're doing today?
Yeah, I guess I'm doing okay. I mean, compared to the worst of the COVID era, this is nothing. It's psychological. I mean, my main problem, and we should all have these first world problems, but my main problem is I have a flight in early July, and I don't even know if I'm going to make it because the airport is closed, and they're only allowing emergency flights out. And me being anti-war in general, but also not wanting Iran to have nuclear weapons, and also not trusting my government, but thinking that maybe they have some of our interests at heart, but I don't know what. So it's like you don't know what to believe. You don't know what's real. I think what's going on now is slightly more real than COVID was, but I don't know by what degree. And it's just the entire planet is trying to mess with your mind and trying to mix reality and fantasy, and that bleeds over into AI versus reality. What is real, what isn't, and it's turning everything into scrambled eggs. So I'm trying to avoid the news, and I got off Twitter for a while, like I did after October 7th, because it's just too much. So I suspended my account just for a few weeks. I will be back. Don't worry about that. Assuming everyone survives, which I think we will. I mean, physically everything's fine. It's just, it's the equivalent of a soft lockdown again. We're not allowed to pray in our synagogues. We're not allowed to have a minyan. We're not allowed to have any non-essential business. And what's the definition of non-essential? Any business that's not government connected, basically. So it's difficult because you don't know what the truth is, and we might never find out. But physically, everything's fine.
So there's even a lockdown there, it sounds like, kind of like COVID, but not as strict?
Yeah, it's a lockdown in that we can't, usually every morning I pray with a group called a minyan, and we're not allowed to go to synagogues anymore because we're not allowed to have more than 50 people in a room. So it creates this ridiculous situation where instead of going to a synagogue where they have a bomb shelter, we go to people's houses and some of them don't. So we end up in a less safe situation because we're trying to follow the regulations, which was the same thing during COVID lockdowns. They didn't make any sense. Or they're allowing only 50 people on a flight out of Ben Gurion airport because, more than 50 people is dangerous. Why? I mean, does 51 people, does that make the airplane too heavy so you can't dodge missiles? They can't really figure out what any of this is for. But yeah, it's basically a soft lockdown. People are less serious about it because there's bomb shelters everywhere and there's safe rooms in every house. My house doesn't have one, but my neighbor built one because a bomb was dropped on our street. And once that happened, they decided to build a bomb shelter in their backyard. So it's like this big box of like 40 centimeters of concrete with like steel reinforcement and metal doors. So we go there every night, basically. There's been 1 or 2 nights without. the most annoying part is when they go off at 3 a.m. and you can't get any sleep, and then your kids can't go to school, and because they haven't had any sleep and you haven't had any sleep, then everyone's fighting each other in the middle of the day and grumpy and cranky, and it grades on you, and I can't work as well. It's psychological warfare, so it's not like we're going to break anytime soon. We understand, or at least Israel, the people of Israel understand that we got to finish the job, and nobody knows exactly what that means or exactly what's going on. But I mean, we know that they don't like us and they want a nuclear weapon, and we don't want them to have it. So we've got to fight this out, and hopefully with as little involvement of foreign powers as possible. You're not going to get that opinion from most Israelis who want America involved. I do not at all, because I know that people would resent it rightfully, and I don't want that on my conscience or having to deal with that. I know the people, Americans have had enough of foreign wars, especially after Iraq. It's better if we just handle this ourselves, and I hope we do that, and I hope Trump refuses to help us anymore.
I'm glad to hear, though, that it sounds like you're hopeful about people's safety there. I did want to ask you about preparedness, and we had mentioned before we started recording how you're definitely glad that you prepared ahead of time with, just respect to getting basic goods and everything like that. Can you tell us a bit about that and the bare shelves that you've been seeing?
Yeah, so there's different degrees of Armageddon or apocalypse. This is a very small version of it. When war breaks out, everyone heads to the supermarket. So are you going to spend your day in line trying to get some cheese, or are you going to sit at home, relax, and just be able to have the mental capacity to last longer than most other people do because they don't have extra supplies? So there's not, when you think of prepping, you don't have to go all the way to bunker and stock all these a year's worth of dried food or astronaut food or anything like that. You can go that far, but if you have basically enough water to last you a month and enough canned food to last you a month, and you generally keep the fridge stocked, then you don't have to go to the supermarket once these little panics break out. That'll save you, a few days of time and give you some mental capacity to last longer. And if it's a much worse situation, then you'll have to go farther. But you don't have to go all the way initially. Just start with having extra water in your house, something simple. And once you have that, you can stock yourself up with or your house up with more goods and more food, more water, more distractions, whatever you need. And it just feels good not to have to be in those lines, whether it's gas. You can always fill jerry cans with gasoline if you need to. Those kinds of things you don't want to be in line for. It's like avoiding the lines at Disney World, except it's avoiding the lines for real life. So you can be more relaxed. That's basically the idea.
And in a funny sense as well, it seems to probably help everyone else who didn't prepare, because it would even be worse if those who did prepare had to get all the items at the same time as well. I mean, it would be even more chaos. So I think in some sense, a lot of people are against hoarding because they think it's harmful to the supply chain or something like that. But I guess the way that I think about it is, if you slowly accumulate over time the things that you regularly use, there's nothing wrong with that. And if there is a pinch, if there is a real serious situation in the future where everyone, runs to the stores, it's just one less person that's running to the stores and making it more crowded and harder to get the items.
Well, essentially, it's the same thing as speculating on any stock or option or whatever. I mean, if you're a speculator or you're speculating in the commodities markets and you're buying oil or you're selling oil, you're betting on the price. And if you're right, that means you're selling into a price spike, which helps even out the price, or you're buying into a price dip, which helps even out the price. So whatever selfish thing that you do ends up helping your neighbors, whether you intend for that to happen or not. I mean, it's like the Ayn Rand principle of selfishness, right? But it's just capitalism is all it is, and all you're doing is speculating on real consumable consumer goods. That's all, except you're doing it for your own consumption instead of to sell them for a profit. There's no difference between doing that and doing anything else that you're hoarding. I mean, people hoard assets, they hoard stocks, they hoard bonds, they hoard precious metals, they hoard whatever it might be. It's just going to be goods that don't go bad. That's what a stock or a stock is. Debt, we could talk about. Debt's a different issue if you're going to hoard bonds, but I wouldn't do that. But in a balanced economy, hoarding debt it's basically the same principle. It just depends what assets you think are going to go up. And if you think they're consumer assets, then you'll hoard. And again, you don't have to go crazy. Just have enough to not have to participate in bread lines immediately. And I don't want to give the wrong impression. There's nothing really going on here. There's no shortage of food. There's no electricity outages. Iran can't really target anything. Every so often they get lucky and they hit a high-rise building. They hit 2 high-rise buildings, and there's been a few deaths. It's been very sad, but it hasn't been that serious. Most of them have been open areas, and when they've had direct hits on houses, it usually results in nothing because everyone's in the safe part of their house. There's I don't know, I think since the 90s, building regulations have been you have to have one safe room in your house, meaning it's called a mamad here. It's that room with like 40 centimeters of concrete, steel reinforced. Every house since the 1990s has been built with that, and the neighborhood I'm in is older, so every block there's a bomb shelter. So if you don't have a reinforced room in your house, then you have to head over to the bomb shelter. But we have a 10-minute warning. It's not like when Hezbollah was bombing us from Lebanon, we had about 30 seconds. So I really didn't do anything at that point except huddle into the middle of my house and hope nothing hit. Luckily it didn't. It got close, but we were fine. But here we had like 10 minutes. So we wake up, pack up, move next door to the bomb shelter, and that's it.
Again, it seems like you're kind of hopeful about this resolving possibly pretty quickly. You had put a video out last week about how would this war with Iran, or this conflict with Iran, kind of accelerate the end game. And you said that, well, no, unless the U.S. gets involved. Now that the U.S. has gotten involved, what is your perspective about this war, and how do you see it possibly affecting the end game?
So I looked at the history of the U.S. getting involved after October 7th. They got involved indirectly in terms of moving a bunch of assets, fearing that Iran would get involved after October 7th, 2023. So they spent a few $1 billion moving ships around, moving planes around, and it wasn't that much of an expense relatively. We're talking about, let's say, Social Security payments were like $30 billion yesterday. It's a big difference. What I mean by America getting directly involved is, like Iraq, or sending troops over and invading Iran, which I don't think is going to happen. That would ruin everything Trump has stood for. Even bombing the nuclear reactors I was against, because I think it's just going to generate resentment. And but yeah, unless the only way that American involvement could speed up the end game is if it really drains the Treasury's account faster than it otherwise would. And there's like $383 billion left. So I don't think it's going to happen, because they'd have to plan and scale up an invasion over the next like 3 or 4 weeks. And there's no political will for that. Thank God there isn't. What could happen here is Iran responds with some kind of retaliatory strike on American bases, but they've all been evacuated, not completely. They could hit some hardware or some shelter for planes or something, but most of the big equipment is gone already. And I recall this happening when Qasem Soleimani was assassinated by the first Trump administration. I think it was, what was it? Was it 2016, maybe 2017, something like that. And Iran, I heard through some intelligence connections, very secondary connections. It's not like I have any connections to the Mossad directly at all, but through the grapevine of people who say they know people up there. What happened was Iran called up the Trump administration, says, look, we have to respond because our people are expecting it. So we'll tell you where we're going to hit, evacuate now so that we can say that we hit you, and then we can, end this round for now. So I'm hoping the same kind of thing happens. And this doesn't accelerate into something much worse. It could easily devolve into a world war. And that would be bad for everyone. So I'm just hoping that whether the Iranian regime falls or not, we can end this in the next few days or a week or two. But you never know. I mean, I remember reading not Talib Nas, what's his name, the Arab guy who wrote that, Nicholas Talib, yeah, that's his name, and he was talking about the Lebanon Civil War from 1977 to 1990, and everyone thought that it was going to end within the first few weeks in the late 70s, and it didn't until 1990s. So that's the thing. That's the psychological pressure. You don't know how long this is going to last. Who knew that when we first got word of a coronavirus coming out of Wuhan, that it would lead to the lockdown of the entire planet and 2 years of misery? I didn't know that. I wasn't prepared for that. So I'm hoping that this ends and we don't end up in a lockdown for another 2 years, or what the hell is going on. But just get this over with already is what I'm hoping for.
No, when it comes to the markets, it's interesting how most of them seem pretty flat. I mean, gold and silver haven't moved much. The stock market really hasn't moved much. But the U.S. is bombing Iran. I mean, it's something maybe, I mean, as you're saying, maybe the market has the more optimistic outlook of this could fizzle out pretty quickly, which would be fantastic. But also you've been looking at the oil price. What is your take on kind of the oil price also kind of doing nothing at the moment?
So it's not exactly doing nothing. I looked a little bit deeper, excuse me, into what's going on in the oil futures market. And we had on June 13th, when Israel opened up its attack, the oil trading on the futures market that next day was the second highest on record, I think. The highest was like late April 2020. I remember when oil went to negative 35. And that was like all the volume on the sell side. We remember that day. And there wasn't much volume, let's say in February 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine, even though the oil price spiked to $125, it wasn't very heavy volume. But now there's a lot of volume and the price isn't moving. So that's telling me that the buyers and sellers are buying and selling at equal voraciousness, let's just say, or equal eagerness. The sellers are really eager to sell and the buyers are really eager to buy. And they both seem to have very strong cases on the bullish and bearish side. And I'm just trying to logic my way through what that would be. And, the bullish side would be, well, America is bombing Iran, Israel's bombing Iran, so that's going to help. It's going to mess up the oil markets. They're going to close the Straits of Hormuz or something, and then that's 20% of the world's oil goes to the Strait of Hormuz every day. So that would jack up the price of oil to maybe like $150, $200 a barrel in a few weeks. I saw a Zero Hedge article speculating that might be the case. So what's the bearish case? The bearish case is, I'm guessing, that the Iranian regime falls. But remember, before 1979, Iran and Israel were allies. We were very close allies. We imported Iranian oil to fuel the 1967 war effort, partly. We had no problem with them. Iran wasn't involved in that war at all. So Israel and Iran have the potential to be allies, and Iran has the potential to be a Western ally. And if they are, then this whole Iranian sanctions thing goes off the table. Iran's oil capacity, if you look at their oil production before 1979 and after, it drops off a cliff in 1979, and then it's been ever since several million barrels of oil below where it was in 1977, 1978. So you could have a huge influx of oil supply if the Islamic regime falls and you have, the return of the Shah or some other kind of Western-friendly regime. It could really be very bearish for the oil price. It could go either way. We don't know.
And I guess for the rest of the markets then, for gold and silver and the stock market, what is your outlook for them? Do you think it's a similar picture where it's very uncertain at the moment?
Gold and silver are not uncertain. They will continue to move up as the dollar must inflate or die. We're about $383 billion away from a dollar crunch, because that's how much money the Treasury has left. After they're finished spending that, they're going to have to raise more money. And the question is, where are they going to get it from? There's not enough dollars out there for them to raise. The bank reserves are all taken up by the repo markets. So there's going to be another inflation round, meaning another Fed printing money round. And that's going to happen sometime around August or September when they run out of cash. So gold and silver are going up. In terms of stocks, I really have no idea. If this devolves into World War III and Iran becomes stubborn and Russia decides to, I don't know, supply Iran with nuclear weapons or something, Dmitry Medvedev, the I guess you could call him Putin's henchman. I don't even know how much power he actually has, but he was saying, oh, well, now nuclear armed countries are just going to decide to hand over nuclear warheads to Iran just to even the score, which is ludicrous, but he's saying it. I'm not saying it. If that happens, then yeah, I guess, in the event of nuclear war, stocks would go down. But let's not even think about that. The only thing I'm sure of is that there's a dollar crunch coming around August when the Treasury runs out of cash, and I want to be in gold and silver before that happens.
Now, when it comes to gold and silver, I mean, if we look at the price action we've been seeing, I've been talking with a lot of my guests about the action in silver. Obviously, gold has kind of just been going sideways for a couple months here, but silver has really been breaking out above that $35 level, about 36 as we speak. Your take on that, and what kind of movements are you expecting in silver? I know you're looking for both gold and silver to rise, but do you hold the opinion that really we've broken out of a really important channel for silver and we could be heading much higher very soon?
I don't think we have yet. I would if I think the last resistance for silver is something like 37.50 something. I think that's the high from 2012, and from there it could go quickly into the 40s. But I don't think silver is going to move that much until we break 50. Once we break 50, we're in another era. I would say we'd break out of 1980 to 2020, 45-year resistance zone. But the gold to silver ratio is still way out of whack. It's still close to 100. I think it's like 98, something like that, and it should be closer to 60, 50, 40, and in a panic, eventually to 15 to 1. So we'll get there. We're not there yet. If you think you've run out of time to buy silver, you haven't. And silver really is the real play from here on out. And gold for just to keep you calm, and silver to if you really want the big gains. So wait until we get into the 40s. I think we'll be in the 40s for a few months, maybe a year, and then once we pass 50, we could already be in the end game. But who knows what the world's going to look like a few months from now? We're in flux. We're in a blender. So how can you make any predictions unless you're in the top intelligence strata of the international community? If you're the head of Mossad, maybe you know what's going on, but I have no idea.
It is a scary world out there. I really appreciate you taking the time, Rafi, to join us here at Liberty and Finance. Before I let you go, did you want to share with the viewers? I mean, I know, as we already discussed, you've done your own preparedness steps, but I guess for those, in other parts of the world that might not be having the same sort of lockdowns that you're experiencing, or the same sort of concern with respect to geopolitics yet, what are some preparedness steps that you'd recommend for people who find themselves in relative peace for the moment?
Get some extra water. Food is less of a panic if you don't have enough, but if you don't have water and you need water and your water isn't working, you could panic, and that's not good for anybody. So make sure you have a lot of extra water in your house. It's not that hard to store. You can put it in your attic or anywhere. I wouldn't use plastic bottles because they can leach, but something safe, glass, something like that. And also, the other simple thing you can do is get to know your neighbors. Right, our neighbor has a bomb shelter. If I didn't know my neighbor, I wouldn't have been able to go in there, and I'd have to go to the end of my block and run with my little children. It's not a huge run, but running with like a 6-year-old across a block to go to a bomb shelter that is dusty and gross and has like cat skeletons in it, or whoever knows what's in there. Something like these things are used very often. That experience is pretty negative. So if you get to know your neighbors, you become friendly with them, that expands your resources. And if you're short on water, you can ask your neighbor. If you don't know your neighbors, it's going to put you in a much more awkward position. So get to know the people immediately around you, and that's your real social safety net. Forget about Social Security or Medicare. Your real social safety net are the people who live right next door. Get to know them.
And if our viewers are interested in learning more, they can go to endgameinvestor.substack.com. We'll put a link in the description. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I am mainly tracking the plumbing of the financial system and going as deep as I can to try to figure out when the final crunch will be, because I only think there's going to be one more. And on the Substack, there's a whole bunch of philosophical, monetary, what do you say? Like, not screeds, opuses, magnum, whatever, big, long articles explaining the nature of money and why it all goes back to gold and silver, so you understand that gold and silver are actually money right now and everything else is its derivative. Once you understand that, and the articles on the Substack will help you really internalize that, then there's nothing that can really upend your speculation on gold and silver, which isn't even really a speculation. It's just divesting from the system and investing in money itself. Once you get that, you're home free, and it's just a matter of time. So I really try to get people to understand that, and in the meantime, where the plumbing of the financial system stands, when the clog is going to happen, and getting through it as easily as possible.
All right. Well, Rafi, really appreciate your time today, as always, and God bless.
You too.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty in Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin weekly specials for June 16th through June 23rd, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, we feature backdated quarter-ounce gold American Eagles at just $75 over melt per coin. Next, backdated 1-ounce silver maples are only $3.09 over spot. 90% mixed junk constitutional silver is just 99 cents over spot. And finally, backdated 1-ounce platinum platypus coins are just $1.19 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.